everybody, it's Chris Mahan again with Lead Your Teen Podcast. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the first episode or two. And today we're going to talk about motivation. Now, I get asked this question all the time from parents. Actually, it's a statement they give me, and that is, my kid is lazy, my kid is not motivated, my kid won't leave their room, my kid won't get a job, my kid is going nowhere, right? I can't do anything with them. My kid is, won't ever leave their room. They're just on their video games all the time, and they're not motivated. They're lazy. Basically, what is happening is we have created a generation of young people that don't know how to move forward. And unfortunately, parents and a lot of times the school system and society and even in the workplace, which we're going to talk about this here in the coming shows, when it comes to motivation with young people today, we have really screwed up. Okay. I'm just going to tell you, we have really screwed up. And what I mean by that is we have taken an innate need to be connected and to do things and to be creative and to wonder and to figure things out. And we have exchanged that with the trophy, the plastic trophy, the participation award, the allowance system, the bribes, right? If you don't do this, I'm going to take this away. If you do this, I'll give you a brand new shiny penny, right? We've completely ruined how we motivate our kids. And on top of that, what we've done is we now have them expecting that for them to even move, whether it's at a job, whether it's in school, anywhere, that they have to be rewarded all the time. This is a huge problem because, first of all, when you're working with a young kid, like let's say between ages of 2.5 and say 6, right? At 2.5 to 6, the gifts and the bribes are pretty easy. It can be a doll, it can be a candy bar, it can be some time on the TV, or nowadays on the computer, laptop, what have you, the phone, right? It's a very easy thing to give them, to quiet them, to appease them, to bribe them, essentially, okay? As they get older, those little trinkets become bigger and more expensive and more often, because now they don't want just a candy bar. They don't want just some time on the computer. They want concert tickets. They want a new car. They want new clothes. They want new $300 Nikes, right? I know I just discovered that there's a little shoe trade thing going on with people where they'll spend, $300 on a pair of Jordans or something and not wear them, but they have to have them. That's a very expensive thing to motivate your kid. If you want them to do something, they're going to say, well, I'll only do this if I get this. Or you say, if you do this, I will give you the Jordans, or I'll give you the car, or whatever it might be. Again, as they get older, those little motivational gifts become more and more and more expensive, to the point where as a parent, you're like, I'm not doing this anymore. Now you've got what's called a spoiled kid. Now you've got what's called an entitled kid or an ungrateful kid, right? So now the parent then says, my kid is this spoiled, rotten brat. I've given them everything. I've done everything for them. Okay, so what did you expect was going to happen? You just spent 15 years or more giving them everything and training them like a trained SEAL to do what they have to do at your beck and call for a gift or a punishment, right? The punishment is, I'm going to ground you. I'm going to take away your phone. I heard this one the other day. I'm going to take the TV out of your room, and I'm going to take the phone away from you if you don't start doing this, or if you don't stop doing this. Again, this is not how you motivate somebody. Can you imagine being at your job and your boss comes to you and says, I'm going to take away something from you. I'm going to punish you, basically. That's called quid pro quo. And that's pretty much think of it like this. If it's this is something I teach at work, and we teach sexual harassment laws at work. And a quid pro quo in the workplace is if a person of authority is bribing someone for sexual favors to do or not do something. And if they don't do it, they lose their job, or they change the performance measures of the job, or they threaten them with being fired. That's a quid pro quo. In the home, we do the same thing, but it's with stuff, right? So what do you expect is going to happen when your kid has been bribed essentially their entire life? And now, because you can't afford it, or they're not, it requires more and more of you to get that same behavior, you become angry. This is not how we have a strong parent-child relationship, okay? And this is not how we prepare them for the workforce, because once they go into the workforce, now they're expecting everything to be at their beck and call. They don't want to go to work because, it gets kind of hard. I got to get up early. I don't want to do that. They lose a job. That causes more conflict, okay? Here is a few solutions to this. And this has been around for a long time, okay? This idea that we have to do the carrot and stick, this idea that we have to punish or bribe, is so outdated. It's so archaic in terms of how we move people. And I don't get anything from this book. I don't get any, I don't even know Daniel Pink, but I'm telling you, this book, he rewrote the ideas from Dr. Harlow, a 1940s experiment from Dr. Harlow from the University of Wisconsin. Harry F. Harlow was the initial professor that discovered innate motivation in action. And basically at that time, the 1940s, everything was based on a different idea, and that was basically the reward and punishment, okay? He discovered that monkeys, of all things, had figured out a puzzle, and they did it without any reward system, because back then too, we had the behavioralist movement, and you had people doing things with pigeons, and if they give them food, they do this, and if you don't give them food, they do that. So that was kind of the thinking back then, that you had to reward everything, right? Extrinsically rewarded. What Dr. Harlow found out was that's not true. Innate motivation allowed these monkeys to figure things out with just the idea of figuring it out, making it happen, right? Well, he was pretty much, in a nutshell, laughed at back then. He was threatened with his job. He let it go. Then, as it would turn out, in the early 1970s, Dr. DC said, hey, I've got to do an experiment on something. What am I going to do? He found the old paperwork from Dr. Harlow, and he recreated that experiment in the 70s. So what Daniel Pink has written about is innate and extrinsically motivated techniques. How do we do this? What do we do? So I'm not going to give you the whole breakdown of this book. You can look it up and go buy it and do what you want to do. Or you can just Google innate motivation versus extrinsically motivated ways of motivating people. But here's the essential thing. When we motivate our young people, we cannot just continue to bribe them. We have to figure out what their interest is, what their talent is. And ironically, through this book and a few others, I wrote about motivation in my book. Yes, shameless plug. I'm sorry. I'm going to talk about it. It's my book. It's an employment book for young people, how to work in the film industry. But one of the things when I work with young people, I know for a fact that they are afraid of is making mistakes and getting them to go do something that they want to have certainty, right? They want to know what's going to happen. Well, we can't do that, but we can tell them, hey, if you tell me kind of what you're interested in and what you like, we can figure out a way to get you moving forward. This is something else with motivation. Motivation isn't just a thing. It's a process, okay? So one of the things we have to do as parents is we have to ask our kids, what is it that you like? What do you want to do? What are your dreams? What are your goals? How can we get you there, right? Most parents today just simply want their kid to figure it out. They want them to go to college or go to a trade school or get a job or go to the military and just go. Okay. Something else I hear all the time is a parent says, hey, my kid's 18. I'm done parenting. I'm done as their parent. I'm done. I've done 18 years. I'm done. And they say this in front of their kid. And I'm sitting there looking at the kid, and the kid's looking at me, and you can see the tears well up. I don't care if it's a guy, a girl, I don't care how old they are. They just, the feeling that their parent is publicly cutting them loose. And these kids aren't ready for the world. They're not ready at all. So that, with the fact that they don't know what they want to do, the fact that they have been made to jump through hoops their whole life through a reward and punishment system, now at 18, 19, 20, 22, 24, they don't know how to move forward. So they sit. They're stuck. To the outside world, it looks like they're not motivated. They're lazy. But internally, your kid is screaming for help. Your kid is wanting to do more. They just don't know how, right? They have no idea how to move forward. So what I came up with in my book in relation to motivation, like through Daniel Pink and Dr. Harlow and Dr. DC and many, many others when it comes to motivation, I came up with the idea of priming the mind. So if you understand what priming is, it's where you, for instance, in my book, I talk about the old Westerns. And if you remember the old Westerns, you'd have off in the distance the cowboy riding up to the house, and his wife is out there in the dry, dusty field, and she sees him coming. And so she wants to give him some water because he's been gone a long time. So she runs out to the well, and she starts pumping that well and priming it to bring the water up so she can give the guy a drink, right? Back in the day, too, if we had, the old phones, like the old wall crank way back, they have to crank them up, get some energy going, get some power going. So you're priming something. You're trying to get it moving, right? That's the same theory that I have in priming the mind to success. You're sitting there thinking, okay, my son or my daughter is smart. I know they're smart. I know they want to do things. How do I, as a parent, get them off the couch? How do I get them to actually see their own potential? That's something else. That's part of priming. You have to show your kid that they are smart, okay, and they can do something. So when you prime the mind, just like you would anything else, you have to start with a little bit of motion on your side, okay? You have to be that initial energy source to move them in that direction, to get the water to come up through the well, so to speak, and get them to their full potential for what they're supposed to be doing. That means you ask questions. That means you take them to volunteer, to figure out how to deal with the world and see what they like to do. That means that you sit with them and go online and do some classes. There's some great sources online like Coursera. Coursera is a great source to take some classes, figure things out. Allison, ALISON.com. I'm doing 3 classes right now on Allison, all for free. There's over 1,000 different categories of trainings on there, from everything from psychology to IT to just everything under the sun is on there, and it's all free. It's all free. So you are allowing your son or daughter to actually go on there and test drive, if you will, some different subjects. Maybe they don't like it. Fine. Drop out of it. It didn't cost you a thing. Okay? But what you're also doing is you're teaching your child, regardless of what age, right? When I say child, that's from 10 to 24, 25. You're teaching them how to learn. You're teaching them how to do research. You're teaching them how to experiment. You're teaching them how to figure out what drives them. Okay, no pun intended. That's the name of this book. And they're doing it with no reward other than learning, other than figuring out themselves. More and more kids today, and I've worked with over 1,000 of them, more and more young people today are so afraid to make a mistake. They're afraid that they're not going to have the right answer. They're afraid they're going to be laughed at. They're afraid they're not going to live up to someone else's standard. By showing them how to learn and showing them how to innately learn, the motivation is going to pick up because they're going to find something that they enjoy. And there's no pressure, okay? Young people hate pressure. They hate it. I mean, it scares them to death. They want certainty. They want to know that whatever they're doing is going to be perfect. Well, that's not life. You and I know this. That's not how it works. So knowing that, we, as leaders, remember this is about leaders versus managers. You're a leader-style parent here. And if you forgot what that means, I'll have it in the show notes, leaders versus managers. But as a leader to your son or daughter, it is your responsibility, not that of the schools, not that of media, not that of society as a whole. It's your responsibility to teach them this stuff, to encourage them, to support them, to make sure that they have self-discipline enough to know how to do things for themselves. Because one day they are going to be by themselves. They're going to have to get a job. They're going to have to move out. Now, I actually know people that have 30-something-year-old sons that aren't leaving home. Like, that's weird to me. Maybe that's their thing, but it's weird to me. And they're not leaving home because they aren't able. They're not leaving home because they're afraid. They're in their 30s, they're afraid. Now, you take that same idea and put it into an 18-year-old. I have two 18-year-olds right now that I'm working with that are basically about to be on the street. Both of them have drug addict moms. The dad's gone, and they're 18 years old trying to figure things out. So what happens? They come to a federal program where I work, and we, the taxpayer, now have to help them do this. Okay? I don't mind doing it. I get paid to do it. But I would much rather you did it as the parent and save us the tax time and keep that relationship with you and your son or daughter open. Motivation isn't just a simple thing. Like, just go do it. Just go get this done. Motivation is action. It's action by both parties. Action by you to show them how to do things and explain things to them and teach them and give them the options. And then from there, it's action on their part through support, encouragement, love, and self-discipline and respecting where they are to show them that they can do it. We've created a generation of, actually a couple generations of young people, I'm going to say from like 35 down, age 35 down, that are literally emotionally paralyzed. Physically, they're fine. They got 10 toes, 10 fingers, eyes, ears, everything, but emotionally they are paralyzed. And this is something that when I do my workshops, I talk about emotions and how those emotions drive your behaviors and how those thoughts create different behaviors. You know, what they think is what they say to you. So they'll think to themselves, I can't do that. So they're telling themselves, I can't. This is where this is so important. You know, the motivation is so important. Priming the mind, prime it in the right direction, prime it with the right energy, if you will. Think of the child's mind as like a computer, right? If you put a bunch of code in a computer and it's wrong, you're not going to get that computer to work properly, okay? This just happened to me last night. I was rehooking up a new internet provider, and I had the old box from the old provider that I had to send back, and I had the new box from the new provider, but I was looking at the old box and trying to hook up the new box, and it was late, and it wasn't working, right? And I was not getting on my laptop what I wanted in terms of this new internet service. So instantly I'm angry. I'm like, what's going on? Think of the same thing with the information you put in your kid's brain, right? If you're putting in information that is black and white, and you want it to be gray, you're going to be black or white. There's no gray because you don't have the right combination, right? So to motivate our kids, we have to have the right combination, and that is we have to, one, support them and ask questions and ask them, what do you want to do? What do you enjoy? right? So many kids today are just handed everything because the parent is easier. This is again where we come up with the we'll just make it, we'll do it for them, right? You hear the term helicopter parent, you hear the term the hovering parent. All of these things come from somewhere, right? And as a result, our young people grow into teenagers, they grow into young adults, and eventually they want to go into the workforce, and they're not ready because we have not prepared them. So to then say, well, they're not motivated at 18 or 19 or 20 years old is such a cop-out. It's a cop-out from the parent. What were you doing when they were 10? What were you doing when they were 14? Okay. What were you doing when they were 5 or 6? You know, some of the most amazing people begin understanding what they want to do at incredibly young ages. My brother, for example, Shane Mahan, you can look him up. He's the co-owner of Legacy Effects. He's done probably in the last 35, 40 years, some of the most iconic films you've ever seen. I remember when he was 8 years old, he drew, I believe it was a giraffe for our elementary school. And it hung in the library for the longest time, this giraffe. It was like perfect, right? He's 8 years old. It's perfect. He knew at a very, very young age what he wanted to do. My parents knew at a very, very young age for him that he was going to go to Hollywood. They just knew it, right? Everyone knew it. He was writing and directing plays in high school. We were making movies as kids. We were doing like Super 8 films, doing all kinds of crazy stuff because our parents supported and encouraged that for him. So at age 17, when he graduated high school in June of 81, he was on a plane by, I believe it was end of June, early July for California. Now, that probably wouldn't happen today in a lot of cases because 17-year-olds are usually not prepared to leave a small town in Michigan and move all the way to Los Angeles and only have 2 weeks to prepare with a parent. My dad was only 2 weeks with him, and then he's on his own. Now, as the story goes, and I talk about it in my book, after 6 months, he wanted to come home. It was hard. He was freaking out. He was broke. And my dad said, no, give it a full year. Give yourself a full year. And Shane said, no, I'll come home. I'll go to Michigan State. I'll become an art teacher. This is 1981. My dad says, they're laying art teachers off. And, you really need to do this for yourself. You need to really stick it out. And it was a couple weeks after that, he got a job on a movie called Metal Storm. Horrible, silly 80s movie. But from there, he started to meet people. And before long, he met some of the folks he still works with today. From there, he met Stan Winston. And by 19, he was working on the first film, The Terminator. And from there, he just took off. The point is, had he not been supported to stick to what he wanted to do, he was motivated since he was 8 years old to do this. But out of fear, out of failure, out of uncertainty, he wanted to come home. And my dad said, no, give it a year. Give yourself that time. Today, parents don't do that. They throw in the towel right away, if their kid even gets to that point of knowing what they want to try and do. This is why understanding how to be a leader to your kid, sometimes you got to say things that they don't want to hear. Sometimes you have to do things for them that it's for their best interest. And then once they give it that shot and if it just isn't for them, fine. Pack up. It's a detour. Start all over. But you tried. Because see, the habit of quitting, the idea of quitting and saying can't becomes the worst habit. It kills all potential. It kills all motivation. And because we've been doing this for the kids since they were, playing soccer leagues at 5 and 6 and 7 and allowing them to quit. In 2011, I was a football coach at the YMCA. And I was coaching my sons. The two different age groups were like 5 to 7 and like 8 to 13, 8 to 12 flag football. So I had two teams. I learned that there's no keeping of score at the YMCA. I learned that a lot of those kids didn't know how to run in grass. They didn't know how to catch a football. They didn't know how to do anything. Now, the little kids I kind of understood. They're 5, 6, 7 years old. But the older ones, up to almost 13, didn't know how to do anything. And one of the things I would do as a coach is I would say, listen, each kid, we had enough weeks to play. Each kid gets to be a quarterback 1 week. And so 1 week I had a kid who's going to be a quarterback. He's a really good kid. Practiced all week. Like, we did drills. We did actual plays. Okay, so it wasn't just come out and like throw a football. We actually did plays. We did drills. We did practice. Saturday morning, he doesn't show up. Like, nowhere to be found. So I put somebody else in to be a quarterback. Monday, he comes to practice. I'm like, where were you? Like, this was your week to be quarterback. Like, this is it. You know, you only get one shot. His mom says, oh, well, he was at baseball. Baseball. So he's doing football and baseball in school. And the problem was he wasn't getting to be successful either one because he was being stretched too thin. I had other kids that wouldn't show up. I wouldn't see him for 2 weeks. Then magically, at the end of the season, they're all there. It was like, poof, they're all here. It was trophy day and picture day. I didn't want to hand these stupid little plastic trophies out. I was like, are you kidding me? When I went to school back in the 70s and 80s, you practiced, you played, you showed up, you were committed to your team. If you didn't win, you worked harder the next year to win, or for a championship game, or the next week. You competed, you worked out, you went to the gym, you did what you had to do. I started playing basketball competitively at age 8 and loved it. Loved every minute of it. Track, everything. Because I earned what I got. And if I didn't earn it, I tried harder. In 8th grade, I was competing with the varsity team. At age 12, I was sent to Magic Johnson's basketball camp. I was one of maybe 5 white kids in the whole place of like 300 kids. It was fantastic. We don't do that anymore. And if they do play ball or something, it's very selective. I hear these parents say, well, I have travel ball. Okay, so your kid's on a travel team. Now they're all over the place. It's costing you a fortune. But for the other kids, these leagues, they're just not the same. So you take this all with motivation, and we've taken the need to be motivated away from age 5. Think about that. We have taken the need to be motivated away from our kids from the time they can actually conceptualize what it is they're supposed to do. And anyone knows that has a child that between ages of 0 and 5, those are the most formidable years. So what you're putting into that computer system called their brain, and then you're putting in all these programming that's all messed up, and then when they get older, you expect them to be able to kick out these great things and wonder why. It's not fair. It is not fair to our kids. We have to teach innate motivation. That means that they have to want to do something because it's fun for them, it's interesting, it's a challenge, and the reward isn't a candy bar or a plastic trophy. The reward is, I did it. I figured it out. Then they take that same mindset and that same energy and they go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So by the time they're in high school, they're not afraid of job skills. They're not afraid of talking to people. They're not afraid of taking on a new challenge. And most importantly, they know how to come to you and say, hey, I want to figure this out, because they know that you're going to support them. They know that you're going to have their back. Now, again, a lot of parents say, well, of course I do. Just like in the last time I was talking about support, parents say, of course I support them. Of course I'm there for them. You're probably one of 1 or 2% of parents that do that. Kids today are afraid to talk to their own parents. And I know this because they tell me. And I know this because I see it in their actions. And I know this because I've talked to their overbearing, screaming, demanding, coercing parent. The parent-child relationship starts and ends with communication. Then you go into motivation. Then you go into other like job skills and life skills and things like that. But if you can't talk to your kid, if you can't communicate with your kid, they're never going to be motivated. They're too afraid of disappointing you. They're too afraid of making a mistake. They're too afraid of just being a disappointment. Pick up the book, Drive by Daniel Pink. If you can't do that, Google innate motivation versus extrinsically motivated. Do some work. Go on Allison and take a parenting class. It's free. I did it and I teach this stuff. It was all free. It was fantastic. If you have any questions about any of this, follow me on Instagram at Lead Your Teen. If you want some direct contact, email me at leadyourteen@gmail.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, or you can direct message me on Instagram. Again, Instagram is Lead Your Teen, and we can start the conversation right there. Have an awesome day.